Good morning to you all. If you've just joined us, I've got one more minute to go and then I'll make us start. But welcome along. This is your first webinar with us. Pleased to see you. My name is Kath, software trainer for NMR. There is a Q&A you might have seen at the top of your screen. That's to put in any questions as we go through. And then I will come to those at the end. Today is all about yonis. We're doing regular webinars now on Herd Companion, so do keep tuning in. In the Q&A currently, there is a link to my next webinar for you to register, and that one is a back to basics, very farmer oriented, but equally applicable to vets and consultants and advisors as well. So do come along. I'll be looking at breeding and some other basic reports on that one. Okay, so without further ado, let's commence. Okay, on here. Now, interestingly enough, oh, hang on, I've got to admit one here. Okay, we'll carry on. So, yeah, yonis, it's a topic that we keep coming back to, and I was doing a bit of digging. I found a PowerPoint with exactly what I needed for today's presentation that I had written a year ago. So it just goes to show that things do change, but actually the overall message, what to look out for, is consistent throughout. So I just purged all of that and reusing it again, actually, without changing too much. So it's a nice refresher in that regard. A few things to pick out then. We have our disease monitor. So there's two kind of schemes here that we can see on Herd Companion. One is the Herdwise scheme, which most people are on, in fairness, so that's our quarterly testing for the whole herd. The other one is Yonis 1, 2, 3, a bit more flexible, so once, twice or 3 times a year, and you'll find both of those in this menu. So we'll just cover them both on here. I'm using Hartbury University's data, so thank you to them for letting us have access. And they are on Herdwise. So I've got a couple of screenshots for an anonymous herd for the other side, just to give you a flavour of that as well. And actually some screenshots of a not so good herd, because the lovely thing about Hartbury, you know, they do absolutely everything, but they're really good on their yonis management. So there's not an awful lot going on here, which is lovely to see, really. You can see initially from their graph over time, you know, they've done the same as everybody else. They found those yonis cases here and then made plans and steps to eradicate it. As far as J5s go, there's very little going on there. So it's really good. What's interesting also with Herdwise, everything we've ever tested is on here on this page. So right back from when you started testing, all the history is in there. We've got an historic section. If you do need to look up a cow that's left, you'll be able to find it in there and its results. So just wanted to point that one out to you. Latest test date is here. And then we've got the individual results. So no surprises so far. This is all kind of common knowledge. A few other bits on here you may not be aware of. I've got my annoying Teams thing in the way. There we go. So we're in Yonis code order for these cows. This looks quite blank because a lot of these ones are heifers, so they're coming in for the first time. You can see we've got J1s and they're all lactation 1. So that's why we've not got any history for these animals. One thing you can do on here, as with any Herd Companion page, you can change your sort order, left click on the header. You can look up an animal, typing in its number in the white box, like so. And you can add columns to this table. So there is a field chooser column here, or box I should say, which brings up a little box on its own, column chooser, and these are extra columns that you can bring in to this overall grid here. So the element that I wanted to show you was the dam Yonis code, so the code of the dam of that animal. If we just pick that up and literally drag and drop, now you can pop it anywhere you like in the table, it doesn't have to go in a particular place. We just drop it among the headers. You see those 2 arrows tell us where it's going to go. I then let go of my mouse button and I've now got that code alongside the animals one as well. In fact, I could change my mind, pick it up and pop it over there, and then it's alongside. So it's another element to all of that history that's going on. What was the dam before this animal? We can sort on that one and just see if there's any correlations or anything of interest that we might want to pick out. So that's the first thing to show you there. Anything within this grid you can then export as well. So we've got a variety of export options. If you need to take it off Her Companion, look at it later, or offline, put it into Excel. There's a really nice PDF format as well. So that's all in there. Just going to nip to the youngstock report. Up in iReports and youngstock. Reason being, still on Yone's here, these are all your heifers, and this is a really good report for so many reasons. But the heifers are on here. Every single heifer that you've got, anything that has not yet calved is in here. And this one automatically has the damn Yone's code in it. So this is even better in a sense. Before we do anything, before we start to breed, let's have a look at these heifers and decide, with the damn Yone's code in there as well, whether there's any implications. And with all of this information, talk to your vet. It's a real vet farmer discussion topic to decide what your breeding strategies would be based on this information. So do go and have a look at that. Again, you can sort on the dam or on the animals, or you could just filter out. That's the other thing. If you want a list of all the J4s, J5s, within that we can do equal to, and then you can focus in on those ones that may need further investigation. Okay, so that was the first thing I wanted to make you aware of. Hopefully people know by now that that is there. It's been there for some time now, but I will keep mentioning it as we go through in these different things. Now, back to Herdwise. So the other element to this, not only are we looking at J5s these days, we've kind of gone past that in a sense that, yes, they are important, but we also need to consider very carefully with breeding strategies and management of these cows, what we do for those that are just perhaps under the radar, so not actually a J5, and these but have had a high test at some stage. These are priority culls. And you will find these, they might be dotted about in the comments section here. This is where I hope we don't have a bean to display. But what you can also do is go to priority culls up here, and they will be listed as a separate form, if you like. So if I go into there for heartbeat, nothing to see. No, but that gives you an idea. What I can do though, just to show you what it looks like, same sort of grid, priority culls, you can see them really displayed well here. So a priority cull may not be a J5, as I say. It's a cow with one high test over 100 or two high tests over 60. And you can see some illustrations quite nicely here. I'm not going to run this full PowerPoint because then my screen shares takes over with my other screen. So I'm just going to leave it on display like this. But you can clearly see them listed there. So they are, full consideration. They're ones to keep an eye on. If they're already a J5, then we've earmarked them anyway, naturally. If they are J4, they could go either way. This is the thing. And as you know with Yone's, the disease can shed at different times. So it may go up, it may go down. This is why we need to keep an eye and do regular testing to ensure that we've covered everybody at all times throughout the calving cow calendar year, really. So that was another area, as I say, we've changed fairly recently, but it's one, you might want to just have a look, see if you've got any in that window just to observe and look at in a bit more detail. So the other element to all of this, with all of this history, we've got trends, which is ideal, and we can also see our average test value. Very simply, an average of all the test values for the cows in the herd. For Herdwise, you can either do it for a yearly figure or you can do it per test. And those are held in a slightly different place. Disease monitor, Yone's progress tracker. So if you've never looked at this one and you're on Herdwise, you definitely need to have a look. I'll come onto the graph in a second. But just scroll down and you'll see the yearly figures are all calculated here, average test value, and you can also go one step further up to the summary. And we've got a nice graph. So this gives us our trend over time, both for average test value and for the number of J5s. And there's a little line that represents the target. So this dotted line is the outer scale. So anything as a target below 5.5 for a national picture. So this is what we're all aiming for by 2030. And you can then expand on that down here. So these are the average test values per test. Now within these different tables, you will also notice colour coding. So we've got some green going on, we've got some pink and some yellow, and these are representing what the national picture looks like. So with the benchmarking here, we've basically been able to create top 25% of national herds, a bottom 25%, so that's your dark green and your pink, and then in the middle we've got yellow, yellowy colour, and we've also got the light green. So that's kind of your spectrum, if you like, and you can then quite clearly see where you stand compared to the national picture. We've got a good chunk of herds in that figure now, so we are able to, it has meaningful data behind it. You can see your journey per test over time. If I go back to the dashboard, you can see it, in terms of a yearly strategy here. So a really nice example where we've started off quite high relative to other people, and then actually moved through the borders beautifully. And now, second year running, average test value is fine, absolutely low within that boundary. The key is here. So if you do need just a prompt, you've got your reminders there on that one. There are other bits of information in here. So J5s in terms of percentages and J4s. How many of those J4s are P1? So this is parity, lactation 1 animals coming in. Percentage over 30, 60 and 100. So those are our different test value levels in terms of how severe. Then we have what's called relative risk. So how likely, now if you hover the mouse over, it does actually tell you on these, so it's a real useful prompt as well, the likelihood of a J5 being served compared to her other herd mates, the likelihood of carving those in, and your exit strategy. So how likely are you culling those J5s? Now some of these colours actually look a bit misleading. Where we've got pink here, you might think, oh, this isn't looking so good. But actually, because Hartbury currently have no J5s, 0, the exit is 0 because they can't get rid of them. They don't have any. So it's always worth knowing the data behind the figures anyway. But you can see generally, yeah, they haven't served a J5 for a very long time. Carving in, 1 or 2, just raise it as you may carve in that cow and then, exit later on. And certainly, yeah, the numbers here you've got indicate that they are being got rid of quite well. So with those ones, we can then go up to our dashboard here to see how that disease level is being managed. Now, again, these have got the colour coding, so exactly the same idea in terms of comparing yourself to the national picture. And for the vets and advisors amongst you, with Interherd Plus, you can delve even deeper into this kind of area because you can then look at your practice as a whole or your client base and see, in terms of benchmarking, how people compare to each other, how they compare to themselves, perhaps more importantly. So are we improving in certain areas on the whole as a group of farmers working together with common goals, which is really nice. And I'm doing an Interherd Plus webinar in April. I will email you the invite for that, if you want to come along and see what exactly we can do with that. It's quite powerful information, really. So this little chart here I'm just going to nip into my PowerPoint again, hopefully find the right screen this time. Here we go. So we just move that along a little bit. What we have here is the same, it's an analogy basically of a sink. And I must thank Karen Bond for this one. So she created this little picture to help us understand it better. So looking at our center point, this is the sink. This is what everything is pouring into. This is also sort of our herd container, if you like. So progression, turning on the tap, these are your J4s coming in as freshly carved animals, basically. We have the pressure of the tap, so how hard things are coming through. That's your likelihood of serving, so repeating the cycle, if you like, and maintaining that J5 incidence within the herd. We've got persistence here, so that's J5s overall that are, staying here and shedding quite merrily. Removal, so getting rid of those J5s, that's actually pulling the plug out of that sink and seeing what's going on there. So that's your progress tracker kind of format, and hopefully it helps explain it. If we just go back to the graph again, you can see then this is your sink, and we've got various methods of that water being poured in at whatever rate. So it's a real good comparison to help you understand, the measurement elements of this that you can do, and it's all calculated for you so you can see, without too much difficulty. Okay, so that gives us an idea of our average test value, so where we are going, where we've been, and where we want to be as well. So the other side of this, if you're not on Herdwise, we've got the Yonis 1, 2, 3. Just to show you where to find it, and then I'll switch to the PowerPoint again. Disease monitor, Yonis 1, 2, 3, so not too tricky to find. So for an example herd on this one, this is our individual cow result. So very simple table. We can classify according to high, medium and low. We've got the actual result values in here as well. And every time cows are tested, they're listed on here. And you've got certain highlights as well. So we've got a high test we can see in pink. So there's a useful color coding mechanism to help you along. The average test value, go to my next slide, is then in the herd status report. So under that main heading, and then we've got average test value per test in there. Okay, so those are all readily available, and again you can export information from there, pop it into Excel if you need to. Is there a way for external blood tests done on bulling heifers to be added to Herdwise? I think that's a no, because it is all from milk tested in the lab. Anything that I'm not saying correct here, Karen, do chip in, but I'm pretty sure we can't add blood tests to Herdwise, I'm afraid. Do you have to milk record to get access to this, as we're only on JES 4? Now, JES 4, so Yonis with essential sampling, certainly should be on there. That's the third option, actually. If I go into disease monitor, it will be under here. So that's the JES one. So your essential sampling results is sent to you directly, but the Yonis element for that will be under this one. So again, I won't have anything on mine, but that's where you'll find yours. Oh, thank you, Karen. Yeah, she's just filled in there. Can't have blood results. Cutoff used for blood testing is different, so it wouldn't work to combine them with the milk test results. Thanks for that. Okay, another one. Oh yeah, okay, bit different today. How do I go about getting the Yonis information where I can compare all farms in the practice? Yes, so that one is Interherd Plus webinar coming up very soon, whereby you'll be able to pick whichever herds you like. So you can pick all of your client base, or you can pick certain herds with certain criteria, whatever you choose, and then you can display Yonis results, where they were 3 years ago compared to now, and all alongside each other, and I will cover all of that on my next webinar. So absolutely you can do that in bucket loads. Yeah, so watch out for that one. I'll send you an invite. A little bit of the benchmarking like we've seen today, but not so much per client alongside each other. So there are some KPIs within Herd Companion, which we did talk about last time, but it doesn't include Yonis, unfortunately. So you've got basically your progress tracker in here. I suppose you could export some of these tables and merge them together within Excel actually, but into Herd Plus is the real answer there to save you having to tweak it too much. Perfect. Incidentally, those of you that were here last time, or even if you weren't, this may be of interest, with the KPIs. Last time we looked at KPIs which are over here. They're also under Herd Performance. And we were looking, so it's more comparative stuff basically, how this herd is doing compared to NMR herds of similar types. Now when you get to comparison by herd, and this is something I discovered the other day, so still learning here as well, we have an anonymous graph of all the herds within that anonymous group, herd size in this particular example, compared to me, this particular herd in yellow. So the herd you're in is always H1. The anonymous herds are numbered as such, and then you've got the detail under here. What I discovered, which I must have known before but forgot about, in the extra columns bit, again like the field chooser on the other one, you've got premises name. So similar sort of idea, and this was touched on the last webinar, so I thought I must mention it again. You can actually pick that up and pop it into your table. I won't do that now because it's all blank. But when you then compare, so for the anonymous herds, NMR groups, absolutely they remain anonymous. But if you've got a benchmark group as a practice, as a client group, with all of your herds in or a select few, they will then appear in your table. So you will be able to show, two forms at a client discussion group, maybe one with the anonymity, but the other with who's who exactly. So that will help you. And if farmers are happy to share, you can have a real discussion on where everybody sits. But I thought that was worth mentioning this time because I certainly didn't realise it was there, so I suspect other people may not either. Okay, fantastic. Any other questions for today? In the Q&A, if you have a look at that before I end the meeting, right at the top is the link for the next webinar on the 16th of April. So it's a Thursday again, 11 o'clock, seems to suit a lot of people. So please do join me for that one if you are able. Always recorded. We put all of the recordings on the NMR YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to that, you'll get notified when their new ones appear. And you can catch up with that then as well. And I will edit out all the bits that didn't quite work today. So thank you all very much for attending. And do keep in touch. If there's anything else we can help you with, do let us know. Bye-bye for now.